the business plan that wasn't. In the last video, I talked about how all my contracts in my business have come to me, not through my earning it and working at it, but being given those contracts through means that were beyond my control, which is what I call the red wine and popcorn formula. Now, this had been happening all along. I didn't know it. I hadn't observed it. I hadn't taken time to see it. When I first set up shop for my business in 1992, I was starting an independent communications consulting firm, and I set out to dutifully read some of these guides on how to start your own business. So, you create a brochure. This was back in 1991, 92. You create a brochure and you send it out. You buy an ad in the Yellow Pages. Yep, the Yellow Pages. You get an accountant. You incorporate. You lease office space. You buy some nice suits and a leather briefcase so I would look nice. You get some business cards and you create a website. Then you sit down, you write some goals, and you make a business plan, and you wear lipstick. Now, I should say, I had some rigorous sales training when I worked for a life insurance company, Confederation Life, back in the late 80s. I think I put them out of business a few years later. And I should mention that my win rate with Confederation Life was 0 as well. So I kind of knew the basics of cold calling and sales. And so what I decided to do was blitz all the software firms in the city of Toronto and the greater Toronto area, because there was lots of business there, there was lots of IT going on, and they needed me. Okay, I was going to write their user guides because that was my specialty. I'm a communications consultant. So I get on the phone and I write all these letters, and what I hear from them is, who? What? You don't know our business. You don't know our product. What are you, a programmer? And I would say, no, I'm not any of those. But, that's the whole point. I can help you do these things and write them for people who don't know what your program is. Yeah, it didn't work. So I was also going through, just as an aside here, my militant feminist phase. And I attended a meeting of militant feminists. Now, by that, I mean I was going through a period of my life where I felt, oh, so helpless, powerless, vulnerable. I felt like I had no power, and the men were just hiding behind the bushes to attack me. And they had all the power in the corporations. They had all the power in politics. They ruled everything, and here I was, this little helpless maiden. And so when guys would, heckle me in the street and say that I was cute, or they'd whistle at me, I'd go, I'd put up my dukes, like, get out of my way. I didn't realize that that was a compliment, and I could have taken it, because back then I was kind of sexy. So I went to this militant feminist meeting, and they showed their mission statement up on the projector, and it was horrible. It was just horrible. So I said, I can help you with that. And so they got me to help them with their mission statement. And that was it. It was just a volunteer thing, and I went home, and 2 days later the phone rang. Hi, Leslie. I didn't know Leslie. She said, yeah, we met the other day at the militant feminist meeting. Of course, that's not what it was called, but I don't remember the name of the group. So Leslie wanted me to help her with a pamphlet for her women's shelter. I said, sure. A week later, I got a check for $90, and that was the beginning of my business. Woohoo! I broke open some Inniskillen Meritage Reserve, red wine, and celebrated. Now, this was the rainiest summer in my memory, and I sat there watching the rain just pelt down on the window and the roof. And here's the thing, I was reading a book at the time called Ballads of a Bohemian. Ta-da! By Robert Service. Ballads of a Bohemian. So let me tell you something, okay, about because I want you to understand about what a bohemian is based upon Robert Service's poems and his stories. He writes ballads, And it's about when he was living in Paris, in the Latin Quarter of Paris, during the First World War as a Red Cross man. And in tough times, he learned how to make a living by the skin of his teeth, scrounging around, writing poems, selling them to the local newspaper. And he hardly had 2 pennies to rub together, but as soon as he got paid, he'd rush off to his landlord and, present his check and go down to the pub and have some red wine and fresh bread and fish. And that's how he lived his life. So he was the kind of guy who truly enjoyed life in every way. He was an adventurer. He was a true bohemian. This guy inspired me. The key was to survive and to have as much fun as I possibly could have and make the whole thing an adventure. And so a month after I finished this little pamphlet for the women's shelter, the phone rang again. On the other end, Fran. Now, Fran had heard about me from Leslie at the women's shelter. And she said, "Laurie, we need somebody to help us write our guides." The Disabled Women's Network became my biggest client for the next 3 years. And they were a fantastic company to work for. And I didn't do anything to get them. They just heard about me. So this all is part of doing business like a bohemian, is observing how your company grows. And when I sat down to look at it, that's the way it happened. And I would suggest that a lot of businesses, especially if you are in business for yourself, a lot of businesses grow that way. They grow by meeting people and completely beyond your imagination or expectations. In fact, that's how it all started for me. My career as a communications consultant started when I was still working for a union at McMaster University in Hamilton, and I went to a convention. And I was about to, I had dropped out of my PhD program at McMaster, and because I that's not where I belonged. And so I was looking for another place where I could use my talents. And I was, after the convention, I was at a pub sharing a beer. Actually, in my case, I was drinking red wine, of course. And one of my colleagues, Francois, from Montreal, I believe, he said, "Okay, so what would you like to do?" And I said, I want to be a writer. I want to write for a living. He said, "Oh, you should talk to my friend Helen at the Plain Language Center." So I did. I called up Helen. And she introduced me to her boss, Mark. And Mark hired me within 2 months. And I started off running. I had a great salary. I was doing what I love to do. I became very well versed in the profession of plain language consulting within, I would say, 2 weeks. It was like a glove. It fit me like a glove. Perfect for my hand. And that's how it all started. I did not plan to do this. What I had planned to do was to write articles for a living or work for magazines or newspapers. I had no idea this place existed. And how did it happen? It happened when I was sitting at a pub drinking wine with a friend who wasn't really a friend. He was just an acquaintance. That's how it works. Goodbye reason, hello rhyme. So here's the way your small business is supposed to evolve. Traditional marketing methods. You incorporate, you lease office space, you print some stationery and business cards, you've got a nice shiny brochure, a great website, you open a bank account, you hire an accountant, and then you put ads in wherever you want, it's not the yellow pages, and then you start calling, and clients start coming in, and then you have more work than you know what to do with, so you hire employees who make you look great, and then they stay loyal to you for decades, and they take over and you can retire or, live on a buyout. Well, that's not really how it works. How it works is connections with people. So I've read all kinds of stories about the way that businesses survive and thrive and succeed. And the way that you can look at it is kind of like falling in love or getting married or going to university. It's an adventure. You can't predict how it's going to be. So no matter what plans you have in your head, those are fine. Those are fine. I suggest instead that you nurse your visions. Stick with what you envision yourself doing, and then be open. And it's most important that you stay close to people who appreciate you. Hang around people who appreciate your value and like what you do, and they have a lot of respect for you. And then you'll go places. If you keep following your plan, you're following something that's abstract and out there. If you follow connections with people, you'll get where you want to go. These have to be good people, and there has to be good connections. So now I admit it, I'm a hopeless romantic. I'm an idealist. I dance to Al Jarreau's Roof Garden, scat. And, I still get kind of choked up when I hear Amanda Marshall sing, I Believe in You. But I'm also a very successful businesswoman, and I'm a professional, and I'm an entrepreneur. So I know how these things work. And my theory is, after having looked at this for 25 years, that it works according to several very clear principles. I'm not saying traditional methods don't work. They just don't work for me. And they might work for other big companies, but that's not what I've seen in business. So here are the rudiments of the bohemian ethic. You nurse your visions instead of setting goals. You respond instead of plan. And you cultivate relationships with people. You develop an attitude of gratitude. You pursue adventure for its own sake. You savor the simple things in life. You follow your passions. You follow your visions. There you have it. That's the story of my business. It can be yours too.